Senator Corona, I appreciate, and Senator Whitmire, I appreciate your perspective very, very much on this. And I think this is exactly the conversation that should be taking place on this bill. Senator Corona, I think you've staked your reputation on whether this bill comes back with the commitments that you're making to us on this Senate floor. Do you think it's fair to say that?
I would say so.
I think there's a lot of attention being paid after what happened on Thursday, the very strenuous debate, after the strenuous debate that we're having here on the floor today. And I don't think this is something that you were going to sneak back over here on the Senate floor without a lot of folks paying attention to in terms of what happens. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
Now, Senator Corona, I think you know that this issue has been one that I have worked on tremendously hard in the last 3 legislative sessions. And it is as important to me as any single piece of legislation that I've worked on, as important to me as making sure we fund public education for the school children of Texas. And I think that you know that I was not at all happy with the bill as it came out of your Senate Finance Committee. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
And you and I have been able opponents, I would suggest, on whether the amendments that were added on this bill ultimately were to be added. And I will say for the last couple of weeks, as I've been running around the floor and running to our colleagues' offices and calling people on the weekends and sending text messages to them, trying to hold a no vote on this bill until you would agree to take these amendments, you've been working really hard to get your votes, to get this bill up on the floor. And I think had you had your way at the outset, we wouldn't even be seeing these amendments today. Would you agree with that?
No, I agree with you because my concern is, my belief is that some bill is better than no bill, and my concern is that these amendments are going to tilt it where we don't have a bill. But I recognize how important these issues are to folks like yourself. I respect you, as I do other colleagues with similar views, and if this is the way we need to pass it out of here, this is the way I'm going to fight for it. And if we prevail, great. And if we don't, meaning we don't keep these amendments on, you're not going to see this bill again.
Thank you, Senator Corona. Now, there's been some conversation today, and there was conversation on Thursday, too, about who's sitting in the gallery watching the conversation on this bill. And I certainly can identify a few. I know you and other members of this chamber could identify some of the lobby that's been paid by the payday lending industry. I think the figure for 2012, we don't know or for 2011, pardon me, we don't know what it is for 2013, but the figure for 2011 was that over $8 million had been spent by the payday lending industry on lobbying against reform legislation. Were you aware of that?
I am, and I'm a recipient of some of those funds.
These are lobby monies I'm talking about. And, of course, there are also, in the last election cycle, was about $2.3 million, as you just said, that was provided to legislators, also, of course, obviously in an attempt to influence the outcome of regulation. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
But alongside all of that work and all of that money, I want to make sure, Senator, before we move to suspend on this bill, we give some recognition to the work that's been done by folks who don't get paid a dime to do the work that they're doing on behalf of the consumers who are victimized by virtue of the fact that we have absolutely no regulation of this industry in the state of Texas. And I know some would argue that fact with me and say we've got some regulation in place, but we certainly don't when it comes to making sure that fees and interest and practices by this industry are as fair as they should be. And I want to make sure and acknowledge those groups today. Of course, with you on the original bill, CPPP and Texas Impact and United Ways all over the state of Texas and Goodwill Industries. I know they all have worked hard.
They have.
I want to recognize the Catholic charities, the Christian Life Commission, which of course is the Baptist, and I always tease, you know you're doing something right when you got the Catholics and the Baptists agreeing on something with you, right?
That's correct.
And of course Texas Appleseed, who have held strong for these greater reforms, and I think it would be fair to say, and I think you'll agree with me, I hope, that absent that work, we probably wouldn't see what we're seeing on this bill today.
You're absolutely right.
There's a particular amendment here, Senator, and you went through the 6 really quickly, that's very important to me in terms of making sure that we have at least some semblance of compliance with the provisions that are here. And that's the one that I believe Senator Vanderputte is going to introduce in a moment, that requires that the payday lenders have to engage in a reasonable effort to assure a couple of things. Number one, to assure that the gross monthly income limits that are being set in this legislation are not being surpassed, and that they're actually requiring that consumer to provide them with a pay stub so that they can make a determination on that gross monthly income. I'm asking for your commitment that we keep that certification process in place, because without it, the fact that we have these percentage caps in here really are meaningless.
No, Senator, I agree with you on that. What Senator Davis is referring to is previous language. Amongst the various ways you could prove your income, pay stub, and other things, you could simply execute a self-affidavit that said, I make X amount of money and I promise that's the truth. And that would be qualification. And that I think most of us would agree that's entirely too loose, and that's been removed, or will have been removed.
And there are, as we know, consumers of payday loans sometimes, when they get in over their head in these loans and when they get trapped in that debt, unfortunately what they do is they turn to another payday lender to pay off that loan. And then they're trapped in the second loan, and so on and so on and so on. And one of the important things that your bill, as amended, will do is require that the consumer be limited to 2 loan products at a time. I would prefer that it be 1, but it's 2. 1 single payment payday loan and 1 installment product loan. And it requires that the payday lenders use their own databases, because they do actually have electronic databases, don't they?
They do. They have sources that they go to make their best effort to determine whether or not these products have been, or these loans have been offered up elsewhere and executed elsewhere.
And this would require that they utilize their own sources of information to verify that those conditions are being met, and that therefore the law as it's being written will be followed, correct?
That's correct.
And it's your commitment that we will work very hard to make sure that as the bill comes back over, those compliance provisions, which in my opinion without them gives no meat at all to the work we're doing today, will stay as part of this bill.
That's correct, and that's my intent as well.
Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome.
We have a number of amendments, obviously, that we're going to be laid out that were agreed upon by you. I have a few that I'm going to also lay out for the purpose of having hopefully a debate and a vote on them that I think would serve to really make even more meaningful the reforms that are being made today. But I do want to close my questions right now by telling you that I do respect and appreciate the fact that you've been so willing to work with us on the amendments that we are accepting as part of this bill today, and I hope as we lay out some others you'll keep an open mind to them. Obviously, the greatest concern that we have in this legislation. Mr. President, can we get a little order, please?
Absolutely. A little order on the floor, please. Thank you.
The greatest concern that we have in what we're doing here today must be for the consumers of these products. And we've heard many stories, many stories about lives that have been ruined as a consequence of this state's failure. And I put the blame on this state. I don't put it on the lenders even, but on this state's failure to appropriately regulate this industry so that consumers are treated fairly. I believe this product that we're advancing is not perfect, Senator Corona, not by a long shot, but it gets us further down the road from where we are today, and I appreciate your work, and I particularly appreciate the work of all of the consumer groups who have lent their voices and their hearts and their work to this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.